Our guest is Ray Price. We promised you we were going to talk about Ray's recent appearance with the Dallas Symphony, and I understand that was really a great night in Dallas, Ray.
It was just beautiful, Ralph. It turned out even better than I had hoped it would. And
the people that wrote the review said you were some kind of something or another.
Well, I had a lot of fun. I got a big laugh when there was 89 pieces, and they were playing Ray Price charts. They were not playing any contrived charts. There was country music the way I sing it, which was, to me, the greatest compliment of all. And they've got a great symphony. And we had just a mob of people, and I had a lot of my fans were there, and a lot of people from the society end of it, and it was just a great thing. And I made a remark after they did one number particularly great, that was the greatest country band I'd ever stood in front of, and it really floored the conductor. Anshel Brusiloff is his name. But now I think we're going to go back during the regular season. They want me to do one in the regular concert season with the White Tie and Tails, which will be a new experience.
When did you do this concert, Ray?
July the 11th, I believe, or the early part of July.
Was this the first time a country singer had performed with the Dallas Symphony?
As far as I know, it was the first, Ralph, and it was opening another door for country music, which it did. It was very successful, and I was very pleased with it.
What'd you sing on the show?
All of the big hit songs I've had.
Crazy Arms.
Crazy Arms, Heartaches by the Number, Make It Rain, Danny Boy, and For the Good Times, I won't mention again, Nightlife, Spanish Eyes, all the songs that I'm known for, that's what we sang.
What'd you close with?
Well, I close with Danny Boy.
Danny Boy.
Right.
No, you see, I wondered which you would close with, Danny Boy or For the Good Times.
Well, the story was so appropriate that night, especially my dad was in the audience. And I dedicated the song to my dad, who I think is the greatest man I've ever met. And I've met a lot of great men.
What's his name, Ray?
His name is Walter Price.
Really? That's my first name.
Really?
Good name.
Well, he is, I think he's the greatest man I ever met, and I want him to know, and I told the people that the pleasure was extremely great for me because I was a country boy. And when I was a kid, I used to go to Fair Park, and I heard the symphony playing under the stars, and at that time they called it the Starlight Operetta. And it was a great sound. So, and it almost overwhelmed me because it all of a sudden dawned on me at the last what had happened and what had really taken place. I had done a great accomplishment to my way of thinking, my standard, and it just come off beautiful.
Ray, last week on the show, our guest was Hank Williams, Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
who told us an awful lot of stories about his daddy. And I know that you knew Hank Williams as well as anybody. Would it be correct to say that you were his understudy?
Ralph, I don't think it was intended to be that way. Hank and I just, as the old country saying is, took a liking to each other immediately, and it was one of those things where we became friends, and Hank insisted I come to the opera, which he didn't have to do, and it helped me a tremendous amount, and I did. I lived with Hank about 6 months, and then when he left the opera and went back to Shreveport, of course I stayed at the Opry. And I knew Hank as well, maybe not as well as some other men, but I thought I knew him pretty well. He was really a gentle person. He hid behind a facade of gruffness and kind of a hard-nosed attitude, but he was really hiding his feelings. He was desperately in love with Audrey, and he was a good singer, a good entertainer. He had that little spark of magic about him. It's not really much that I can say about Hank, and I can't say enough about Hank. The only thing is I say that he came along at a very opportune time that country music needed a Hank Williams.
Ray, do you remember any little bits of advice he ever gave you?
No, other than he thought that Fred Rose was the really master of country music as a songwriter and maybe even as a publisher. And he introduced me to Fred, and Fred gave me a lot of great advice. Hank Hank knew that it might take him a little longer to explain to me what Fred could tell me in just a few short words. And I feel like that when I got it from Fred, I got it from Hank.
Was Crazy Arms the first time around? Was that the biggest record in your early career?
Well, at that time, it was a big record. I think it's been certified as a million seller. And it certainly launched the new sound in country music, which everybody recorded with, called the Price sound. It was a new thing. And at the time that I recorded the song, all the country boys were doing rock and roll.
Yeah.
And it was a really uptight time for country music. It was a trial, and there was a real panic on because Elvis Presley had tore the world apart. And when I recorded Crazy Arms with a new sound, we knocked Elvis with Blue Suede Shoes off a #1 position. And he came back with Heartbreak Hotel and got the #1 position back and held it for 2 weeks, and I knocked him off again with Crazy Arms and then hung there for about 52 weeks with it. It was a big song. But I had recorded songs prior to that with big, like Talk to Your Heart was the first, and Don't Let the Stars Get in Your Eyes, and Release Me.
Yeah, they were all big records.
They were big records, but they didn't have that #1 spot written on them, you know.
Ray, getting back for a moment to the Dallas Symphony, I presume that night in Dallas you did Release Me.
Yes, I did.
You didn't tell people you got 2 standing ovations for that.
Well, I kind of, if I did, it would sound like maybe I was bragging or something, and I certainly don't mean it in that light. I'm very thankful for the ovations. That is about as great a compliment as an audience can give a singer.
From what you have told me, I got the impression you were quite moved by the evening. Did you ever get choked up to the point you couldn't sing?
Well, when I did introduce Danny Boy and reminisced a little bit about the fact that I was a country boy and was born on a farm, that my dad was a sharecropper, and that I had that kind of beginning, and the fact that I was standing in a position that I was at the moment, that it was really a great thing for me. And about the time I said that, it almost overwhelmed me, and I'm usually not at a loss for words, because when you're on the stage, that's not the time for a loss of words, as you well know.
Well, if you can't talk, can you sing?
Well, I did the number. I had to shut up, and which was probably the best anyway. I might have said too much, and but I was very proud of it, and I still am very proud of it.
And Ray, I understand that you went to college one time and took veterinary medicine. Were you going to be a vet?
I was going to try to be a horse doctor, right? And but I got interested in the musical career, and I quit college.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to college at that time called North Texas Agriculture College. It's now North Texas State College, I believe.
Did you ever learn to treat a horse?
No, I've still got a lot that I'm fooling with, but I haven't learned to treat them right.
Don't you have a string of race horses?
Yes, I have. Mm-hmm.
Have you done any good with those?
We won the President Cup race at Omaha last year.
At Axarban
right.
racetrack?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think in terms of the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I think anybody that raises horses thinks of the Kentucky Derby. Of course, you know, Ralph, that isn't the biggest money race in the world, but it's a big prestige race. And actually, quarter horses has the biggest money race. I think the purse is $1 million.
Carl Smith was here a few weeks ago, and he was talking about that.
Right.
How many race horses do you have?
About 25.
25? Mm-hmm. Boy, that's a lot of feed.
Yeah, you bet. But we...
But do you breed horses?
Yes, I do. And we break and train, and in fact, we think enough of our horses, we race our own horses.
Where do you do all this, Ray?
Well, we're in Chicago right now. We just left Axarban, and we're in Chicago, and we will be there, and I think later on, if I have the stock that's good enough to run, and compete with the people that runs in the Kentucky Derby, I think we'll go to Tropical Park this fall.
Now, when you say we, you're talking about the handlers and the trainers.
Oh, my trainer, right.
What's the name of the best horse you have, the one that won the President's Cup?
Sea Phantom.
Sea Phantom. Have you named any of the horses after tunes?
Well, I tried to, Ralph. I have a horse that is sired by a stallion in Kentucky called Octopus. And I wanted to name the son of Octopus Crazy Arms, but I couldn't get it on.
Are you putting me on?
No, I'm telling you the truth. That's a good name for him, you know.
Ray, I imagine you and Floyd Cramer go back a ways, don't you?
A long ways. When Floyd came here from Shreveport, Louisiana, he and a friend of his at that time, who became my steel player, Jimmy Day, one of the steel men that I had, they came here, and Floyd played on a lot of my sessions, and I liked Floyd. And Floyd progressed himself and his music until he's done great things, really great things, and he's a great piano player. And Floyd does me the honor that when he is in town, he still plays piano on my sessions. And to me, I think it's great of him, because I know he's got a lot of other things to do, and he's certainly not doing it for the money.
He doesn't play on many anymore, does
No,
he?
that's right.
I guess you'd say for old time's sake, then.
Right, and we go back. We did a lot of fishing together, and Floyd's a nice person.
Our guest is Ray Price, and Ray, I want to ask you about that bass fishing. You brought up the fact that you like to fish. As I remember, didn't you used to demonstrate in a Sears store the proper method for casting?
Well, I didn't demonstrate the proper the proper method, you might say, but I worked in the sporting good department of Sears in Dallas at one time, and I had to work a booth at the Fair Park. At that time, it was a new thing called the sports shows, where all the tackle industries. And I met a fellow there that hired me and to go to work for Brill's Oklahoma Outdoor Hunting and Fishing Guide magazine. And we put on casting exhibitions at different rod and gun clubs, and sold advertisement for the magazine and things like that.
Apparently, you came with a pretty good fishing reputation then to get a job like that.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty tough. I won't deny that one. That's one thing I like to say. I am a fisherman, and I've learned a lot about bass fishing, and I love to bass fish. I think it's a great sport, clean sport.
What's the biggest bass you ever caught?
The biggest that I ever caught that I stuck on the wall was 11-pounder.
Now, we talking about largemouth?
Largemouth. I caught one time, I think it weighed a little over 13 pounds, and I was in Florida, and they got to telling me that was a small one, and I cut him up.
You're a kid.
No, I'm telling you the truth. Caught him on fly rod, too. And it was really quite a story. I had a guy that got really excited, and the fish would wrap around grass and saw it up with this little 6 or 7 pound leader, and all I could hear him say was, "Lord God, Mr. Price, don't lose that trout."
Helped me make it through the night, and I believe I'm correct in saying you had the first recording of this, didn't you?
That's right, Ralph. I recorded the song at the same time that I did for the Good Times, but I had requested Columbia save the tune back for my next single, and they made a mistake and put it in the album that I cut at the same time, and it really it hurt me in a way, because all the jockeys was screaming, "Man, help me make it through the night out," and it was tearing Columbia's head up. And Columbia was calling me, said, "Man, there's smashes in the album." I said, "You got to be crazy. It's for the good times, you know."
Mm-hmm.
Well, then it got to a point where it got almost overpowering, but I still said, "No, it's for the good times." And I fought for it, because Columbia at first didn't believe in for the good
Well, in
times.
either case, it shows you knew how to pick a good song.
Right. Well, I've done pretty good. Yeah, I think they're good songs. And, of course, Miss Smith made a good record of it and sold a lot of records, and I sold a lot of it. The album that it was in sold 2 million copies, so I still feel like I got the track record on the song.
How are you going to fault an album that sold 2 million? Ray, who's this pretty girl you're married to over here?
Oh, she's East Texas girl. They grow them pretty down there.
I should say so.
Yeah, and they grow good watermelons down that country, too. Used to be
In which order? The girls or the watermelon?
No, the girls first and then the watermelons.
What's her name?
Janie. Janie Mae.
Janie Mae?
Janie Mae.
Country girl, huh?
I'm telling you, partner. She's from far back in East Texas. They got the opera on Tuesday.
I almost said noble Ray Price.
Yeah, well, you finally got around to it. I knew you would whenever they let you in on it, earlier in the program. So, but I'm proud of the name. Really
It almost
am.
sounds like a title, a shrine title, Noble Ray Price.
Yeah, I believe they do call each other noble, don't they? Well, that would be an honor, too, being a Shriner. They're a great organization. Of course, I'm a Mason anyway, but I'm not a Shriner. And I like the name. The only thing is I dropped the first name, which incidentally I was named after a favorite uncle, and I dropped the first name when I was in the Marine Corps.
I thought in the service they always took your first name, dropped the second. You just didn't tell them, did you?
Well, after we had a few words over it, I had to drop it, I was the littlest guy in the platoon.
Ray, we've come and we have arrived at the place in the show where we're going to play Danny Boy, and we've set aside 5 minutes for this. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. And this was a song that turned your career around, wasn't it?
That's right, and actually the reason why I recorded this song was Columbia always put on a big show at the disc jockey convention, and I always wanted to do a song that would stop the convention. So one day I decided to do Danny Boy.
Why did you think Danny Boy would do it?
I thought it was a great song. I don't know why, but it just seemed like it would be a showstopper. Up to that time, I'd been stopping them with San Antonio Rose. But after about 2 or 3 years, that got old, and I thought I had to have another song. So I stopped it with Danny Boy, and I stopped it for the next 3 years with Danny Boy. And the jockeys all began to say, Ray, why don't you record Danny Boy, man? Everybody wants to hear it. And I had included it in all my shows by this time. So I decided to do it. And I called Don Law and said I wanted to record Danny Boy, and he thought about it a few minutes because everybody's recorded it. And I said, no, I want to do it a little different. I want to use the Symphony strings, and I want arrangements made of it. And that kind of hit him from left field, but Don and I had been together for a long time, and he knew that I didn't want to do anything frivolous, so he said, well, let me call New York and get an okay on it because they have a budget. And especially for this one, even though I was selling a lot of records, the budget on Danny Boy was quite big at that time because we had 48 pieces.
48 musicians on this
48
record?
musicians. So they said, okay.
Did you get any more songs on that session, I hope?
Well, I got a couple.
What did you record the same time you recorded Danny Boy?
At the same time I recorded Danny Boy, I think I recorded Ralph part of the album, which was Green Sleeves and Across the Wide Missouri. I think that was the 3 that I recorded at the time.
Was the use of 48 musicians some sort of record in Nashville?
It was at that time. It was the largest session that, and may still be the largest session that they've ever had.
Boy, that's an acre of fiddles, isn't it? Our guest this week is Ray Price. Ray, you mentioned a moment ago about the careers that you started. What famous people played in the Ray Price Cherokee Cowboy Band?
Well, I can name a few. One is, of course, is Roger Miller, and Roger was one of the front men. And, of course, then there was Johnny Bush, Darrell McCall, Willie Nelson, Donnie Young, who is now Johnny Paycheck, Ray Sanders, and they all kind of went out and branched out on their own. That's what happened to the band. So there really is no more Cherokee Cowboys because I never was a Cherokee Cowboy. They called me that because the band was that.
Ray, when you had all those people in your band from time to time, they weren't in the band at the same time, were they?
No, some of them were. But the band that I'm talking, except for the Johnny Bush, Johnny was a drummer.
Yeah.
The other boys, Donnie Young and Darrell McCall, were there at one time together.
Well, my question is, did you have any idea that any of them would become stars? Did they look like star material?
Well, I thought they was good enough to be in front of my band. I'll put it that way.
That answer my question?
That's it.
Our guest is Ray Price, and Ray, I can't help but feel that you're still on the defensive. People still attack your music and what you're doing with it?
Oh, not as much as they were, Ralph. I've kind of gotten used to it. I think that everything proved out to the best.
What was it you said last year when you won that award for the best album of the year from the CMA?
What people want to know what I'd been doing. Well, I held the award up. That's what I had been doing. Yeah.
That was for the album. I won't mention
it again. Yeah, I didn't get an award for the good times.
I thought that was the better.
Yeah, well, I did too. But at that time, the awards were given on the basis that a song that had been recorded before couldn't be given. Although they did give one for Rose Garden, they wouldn't allow Kris to have it. I was kind of disappointed in them.
Yeah, we're talking about eligibility rules.
Right. Then they changed the rule the next year, but of course I had previously been up the year before, so even though it was the biggest song that I've had in all my career, it didn't really win any awards.
For the good times.
Right.
Isn't that amazing? Is that disappointing to you?
Yes, it is.
Before we mislead people, you did win
the Grammy.
You won the Grammy for
the singer,
the best recording.
Right.
For your recording of For the Good Times.
Right. Right.
Did Kristofferson bring you that song personally?
No. A friend of mine, a fellow right here in town that's a song plugger and a great songwriter in his own way. Ray Pennington brought me the song. He said, "I think it's great. I think you ought to do it."
Ray, did you immediately think it was a good song?
I thought it was a smash, and I heard it the first time. There's no doubt when you hear a good one, it's there, and it hits you all at once. If it is so subtle that it takes 5 or 6 times to hit you, it's too subtle.
You feel then if a song doesn't hit you immediately, then there is some doubt about whether the song.
Well, for me, if it doesn't hit me immediately, because if it hits me immediately, then I like it, and there's qualities in it that I dig and that I think my fans like for me to do, and I can do it real.
Has it always been that way? Have you dug all the songs like Crazy Arms and Heartaches with the Numbers?
All of them.
Danny Boy?
All of them.
You dug these from the outset?
Right.
Ray, I got the impression that you are a big fan of Kris Kristofferson.
Well, absolutely. I think Kris is a fantastic talent, and I know that the songs he writes touches me, and they're fresh, and after all, it takes quite a talent to be able to make something old into a fresh sound, and which is really.
Are you talking about his making Ray Price into a fresh sound, or what?
Well, no, the lyrics. You know, you can only write so many ideas, and then you have to get repetitious. It just depends on how you deal with them, and this fellow has a fantastic knack for doing it. In fact, the lines in his songs, to me, strike a chord, and especially one line in this song where he says, "I reached for my cleanest dirty shirt."
Ray, it looks like we have reached the end of the road. I certainly appreciate your coming on our program.
Well, it's been an enjoyable week for me, Ralph, and I appreciate you letting us come on the show and take up your time. But it's nice to get together and talk with you and talk about the great artists in country music and what's happening.